Welcome to the deep dive. Today, we are opening the sources on a catastrophe so profound it threatened to, well, dissolve the boundaries of reality itself. We're plunging into the events of the Dark War, a conflict where the lines between magical strategy and raw existential horror completely blur.
Yeah, this isn't just a military history. I mean, the sources you've shared detail this multi-world invasion spearheaded by the Dasati, beings who aren't just seeking territory, they're like exporting a culture of absolute self-destruction. It's
Yes,
insane.
destruction. How so?
Well, their idea of conquest is described as the highest manifestation of violence, and they're masters of magical engineering on a scale that, frankly, forces gods to get involved.
Okay, so our mission today is to be your expert guide through this crisis, navigating the complexity across both Midkemia and Kelawan. We need to fully unpack, let's say, three massive threads. First, the true metaphysical nature of the threat. What exactly is tearing the universe apart?
Right, that's key.
Second, the desperate, really calculated defense mounted by veterans like Pug, Miranda, and Casper. And finally, we have to tally the truly shocking cost of survival.
And to give you a sense of scale here, we are moving from the highest cosmological revelations given by characters like Macros, who we'll get into, down to, chaotic ground intelligence gathered by heroes like Jim Dasher. It all centers around a threat involving the most ancient races and, well, the most manipulative gods.
Let's unpack this then. We should probably start at the top, right? Because understanding the invaders means understanding the structure of reality they're trying to break.
Absolutely. And the foundational understanding of this whole war comes through Macros.
Yeah.
He's delivering this crucial cosmological context while he is literally disintegrating. It's quite a scene.
Yeah, and that context is filtered through this profound personal crisis he's having. Macros, the legendary gardener, has been somehow transposed into a Dasati body. Our sources note he's biologically only, 30 years old by Dasati standards?
Something like that, yeah. But he's carrying centuries of memory from his previous life. So you have this fragmented yet deeply knowledgeable version of Macros giving this terrifying blueprint to Pug and his son, Magnus.
And what's the blueprint? How does he explain it?
He uses this powerful visual analogy, the illusion of the globe. Imagine all existence contained within a giant cosmic sphere. Simple enough, right?
Okay, I'm with you.
But this sphere isn't uniform. It's banded with layers, kind of like a massive onion. These layers represent the distinct planes of reality and Midkemia and Kelawan. They occupy the central, more stable layers.
Okay, the center of the onion. Got it. And what makes this particular conflict so, you said, symmetrical and dangerous?
It's this concept of matching worlds. The sources are really explicit about this. The Dasati homeworld, Omadrabar, is the physical counterpart, like a mirror image, of Kelawan.
Ah.
And likewise, the world of Kusridi, which is where Pug first ran into them way back when, that's the counterpart to Midkemia.
So there's a connection, a link.
Exactly. It creates this, well, this terrifying resonance. When one world is stressed, its mirror counterpart feels that pressure, and that stress is manifesting as the disturbance, which Macros visualizes really vividly as a long, thin needle, a point of pure destructive force pushing through that cosmic sphere from below.
Wow. So if you imagine that sphere, this needle is pushing up, causing the layers, the planes to intersect violently, tearing the fundamental barriers that separate realities.
Precisely. The resulting intersection is just pure chaos.
And where's it coming from?
That's the crucial detail. It's coming from the lower realms, the zones of greater sort of cosmic disorder. Macros also confirms something critical. The situation is contained, relatively speaking, only because of the balance restored during the previous Chaos Wars.
So it could be worse.
Oh, much worse. We aren't, thank the higher powers, dealing with pressure from the first heaven, the ultimate higher conflict, because the Nameless One is still imprisoned. This means the pressure is purely upward, trying to invert and devour the worlds above it.
The idea that this is the lesser chaos is, chilling. But let's focus now on the entity exporting this chaos. The Dasati themselves and their homeworld, Omadrabar. What's it like?
Well, to understand the Dasati mindset, you really have to look at their architecture. If you were viewing Omadrabar from orbit, you'd see a world just dominated by construction. They have paved, built over, or consumed way more of their natural surface than Midkemia or Kelowon ever have.
So they live in cities that cover almost everything.
Pretty much. They're forced to incorporate these gargantuan farming enclaves within their monumental cities just to sustain their immense population.
That suggests incredible logistics, amazing engineering capabilities, actually. But the sources also detail this aesthetic of just absolute soul-crushing uniformity.
Exactly. We are talking edifices of dark gray stone, complete lack of decorative variety, uniform doorways, uniform windows. The only relief comes from these subtle plays of energy-hot reds, deep purples that kind of flicker and fade across the
It
surfaces.
sounds bleak.
It's architectural monotony elevated to a cultural mandate, almost. The lack of originality, the massive scale, we're talking vast interconnected walls and boulevards running hundreds of feet above the ground. It all reflects a society that values pure, relentless function over any sense of individual or creative expression. The sheer size hints at some ancient power, sure, but the current culture seems rigid, focused only on survival through consumption.
And this leads us right to the heart of their darkness, doesn't it? Their survival history.
Yeah, Macros lays out their history pretty bluntly. Their civilization survived by conquering the 12 worlds, that's 12 other worlds, and they put every intelligent being they found to the sword or, used them for sacrifices.
Okay.
And once they ran out of external victims, once there was nothing left to consume or conquer, they turned inward. They started preying on one another.
This resulted in a society defined by death and madness. I have to pause here because that culture sounds utterly, completely unsustainable. How does the source material reconcile their engineering prowess with a society driven purely by this internalized, codified violence?
It seems to work because their morality is just fundamentally inverted from ours. Their version of comedy, for example, is based exclusively on pain and suffering.
Wait, comedy? Based on suffering?
Yeah. If a human audience watches a hero suffer and feels compassion, that's tragedy for us, right? If they watch someone suffer and laugh, that's Dasati comedy. The sources note they carry this concept to an insane length.
So empathy.
Empathy, in their world, isn't just a secondary emotion. It's viewed as a fundamental weakness. It's a susceptibility to be exploited immediately. Therefore, their organization, their society, isn't based on shared understanding or compassion, but on ruthless hierarchy and absolute fear-driven obedience. Function triumphs over feeling every single time.
So they are essentially exporting their own self-destruction, but projecting it onto a cosmic scale. Okay, shifting gears slightly, moving into strategy. Macros offers an intuition that goes beyond just tactical defense, right?
Yeah, he senses that the current threat isn't just a military invasion. It requires stopping the universe itself from tearing apart.
Which pivots the discussion to prophecy, doesn't it? And this tool required for this universal repair, the God Killer.
Exactly. Macros reveals that a Dasati lord is prophesied to rebel against their leader, the Tekarana, and this act of rebellion will prepare the way for the weapon.
The God Killer. And Pug, Magnus, and Nakor immediately jump to the question of who this weapon is. They've encountered Beck, this deeply disturbing, bloodthirsty young warrior. Nakor is absolutely certain Beck is the one.
Yeah, Nakor has zero doubts. Beck is the weapon, the one intended to kill the Dark God.
God.
But here is where the massive existential uncertainty creeps in. Macros, despite his centuries of knowledge, remains unsure. Is Beck the weapon, or merely a weapon, a necessary catalyst in a much larger, darker scheme? You have to remember, Macros is physically deteriorating in this Dasati body. His ancient memories are failing him, and he just can't afford to be wrong.
That ambiguity forces the defenders to act, doesn't it? Knowing they might be supporting a monster to save everyone else.
Precisely. The knowledge they receive is vital, but it's incomplete and, frankly, tainted. They need hard intelligence, real-time information, and that brings us back to Kelowon and the incredible escape of Miranda.
Right, Miranda's captivity. That was critical, wasn't it? Because she didn't just survive. She actively used her captivity to gather intel on the Dasati's magical limits.
She absolutely did. The sources detailed the searing mental agony inflicted by the Dasati death priests during interrogation. Miranda's survival strategy wasn't physical resistance. It was pure mental discipline. She had to partition off this detached, disciplined fraction of her consciousness, focusing entirely on observing the death priests, ignoring the intense, grinding pain, just so she could learn their magical signatures and weaknesses.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
Unimaginably so. And the interrogation methods were erratic, deeply disturbing, showing a methodical technique. Sometimes they were conversational, sometimes physical violence, sometimes they just restricted her considerable powers. It was only when a death priest presumed to touch her naked body that she unleashed this fury, so terrifying they realized the danger of her raw power. and focused just on suppressing her.
And the escape itself, that was a huge risk, moving through their magic shield thing.
A massive gamble. Traversing that dense, protective magic sphere the Dasati used to shield themselves on Kelowon, it required careful preparation for a short jump to a known landmark that rise with the Lord's Bush flowers she remembered.
And the moment she made that leap, the sources described the pain.
Yeah, the physical cost of translation back to her native environment was agonizing, described as ice cutting into her nerves. That moment was the final confirmation. The Dasati Dome offered an alien environment that was protective of them, not just a barrier against Kelowon.
Which leads directly to her critical discovery, the real linchpin of the defense plan.
Absolutely. After escaping, she manages to capture a death priest. And she observed him combust violently, just turn to white ash the moment he was outside the influence of the dome. Her genius conclusion was that outside their protective sphere, the Dasatis are simply unable to deal with the sheer, powerful abundance of energy inherent in Kelowon's environment.
Okay, hang on. This is a huge technical detail, easy to miss. So, on Midkemia and Kelowon, magic is often about channeling or drawing on available power, right?
Generally, yes.
But for the Dasati, their magic is likely structured differently. Controlled, maybe relies on a scarcity model or a really regulated energy input. So stepping into Kelowon is like plugging a delicate circuit board into a raw electrical grid.
That's a perfect analogy. It's an overdose of raw, uncontrolled planar energy. This vulnerability means the Dasati can only maintain a foothold through these massive controlled spheres or through constant, incredibly costly sacrifice. Miranda immediately understood this and leveraged this intelligence in the political arena.
She raced to deliver her warning to Emperor Sezu and the High Council. And the political maneuvering here is described as exquisite. She intentionally referenced the tragic Rift War.
Yeah, that period where the invasion wasn't real, but a deadly internal ploy in the Serani game of the Council. Bringing that up lent immediate, undeniable gravity to her warning. This wasn't political games, this was real.
And Emperor Sezu, first of that name, how did he take it?
He handled it brilliantly, according to the sources. It suggests he wasn't entirely surprised, maybe indicating he'd been pre-briefed or had already anticipated something of this scale. Crucially, he didn't panic. He immediately framed the crisis in terms of Serani tradition and the legacy of his formidable great-grandmother, Mara of the Acoma.
Ah, invoking Mara. Smart.
Very. It linked the immediate, terrifying reality to centuries of Serani resilience, stabilizing the leadership instantly.
But even with Sezu's composure, the stakes were made terrifyingly clear by that cryptic note Pugs sent to their son, Caleb, right? Prepare to evacuate Malamber.
Exactly. Miranda instantly grasps the horrifying truth. This wasn't about strategic retreat. It was about preserving the Serani race itself. Pug was preparing to evacuate the entire world.
Wow.
And Caleb is immediately tasked with the impossible, convincing the kings of the Isles, Roldim, and the Emperor of Great Kesh to accept Serani refugees. Knowing that historically the Serani are seen as ruthless invaders themselves, the urgency is just astronomical.
So while the massive logistics of evacuation begin, the Dasati launched this devastating, calculated blow. Varen's treachery and the suicide attack on the Holy City.
Yeah, that was brutal. The Dasati inserted 3 columns of elite Death Knights via portals right into the heart of Serani power, the High Council chambers, the Administration Suite, and the Merchant's Quarter. Varen, the human trader who served them, observed the scene with cold detachment.
What did he see?
He noted the fanatical Thurani guards dying almost instantly, like kittens attacking a lion, just overwhelmed. But he also knew the terrible arithmetic involved. The surviving Death Knights would eventually succumb to the excess energy of Kelowon anyway. This was a massive, calculated sacrifice of highly trained troops.
Okay, so we have to ask, why? Why throw away thousands of elite warriors who, as those Dasati allies Martuch and Hiria confirmed, do not die just to die?
Well, Martuk and Hiria confirmed that conquest is the highest manifestation of violence for them, yes. But the motivation here is specific. The raid's immediate purpose was tactical. Eliminate Serani political and military leadership, sow chaos, and create time for the Dark One to establish a deeper, more stable foothold.
But Pug realizes there's a truly horrific magical purpose behind the sacrifice too, doesn't he?
Oh, yes. The Dasatis don't just want to exist in Kelowon. They want to remake Kelowon to match their own brutal, ordered world, Omatrabar. And to perform this kind of world-shaping magic, to tear down the energy barriers and change the fundamental magical structure of a planet, the Dark One needs immense power.
Power measured in lives.
Exactly. Pug realizes the sacrifice raid's ultimate goal is to gather millions of lives. The immediate sacrifice of thousands of Death Knights is almost like insurance, a minor expenditure of life force now, to ensure the mass harvesting of millions of Serani souls later. It is magical world engineering on an absolute nightmare scale.
Unbelievable. And while Kelwan is reeling from this internal and external assault, the effects of the disturbance are starting to manifest across Mykemia, too.
That's right. The initial warning signs on Mykemia are detected by Jim Dasher and the Krondor regulars near the peaks of the core. Jim Dasher, the grandson of the legendary Jimmy the Hand, he's absolutely crucial here.
He's a classic spy and thief for the crown, isn't he? Known for being faster than the other man, that much luckier. The sources emphasize his competence alongside his complicated but passionate romantic entanglement with Lady Michelle de Frechette. Makes him a highly skilled, high-stakes operative.
Definitely. He and his companions, Jami and Servan, they spot the landing of two Dasati longboats, and they note something new. They were accompanied by a robed magician who was clearly deferential to the Dasati style, a new kind of threat appearing. But the real immediate tactical problem arrived with that elemental creature conjured by the Death Priest.
Right. Describe this creature again, because it forced them into a desperate retreat.
It was immense and getting bigger, covered in black rock skin. Its eyes were described as red flames, and its bulk was bound by bands of burning metal. The intense heat radiating from it was like standing before an open oven, forcing the irregulars and Casper's men back immediately. Iron arrows just bounced harmlessly off his hide. This wasn't just a monster, it was a force of nature, confirming that Dasati were using powerful, non-traditional magic right there on Mykemian soil.
And meanwhile, the Allied forces, Casper and his company, they run right into another crisis, don't they? Captured by the Sun Elves.
Yeah, the Anordel. They're taken to the Elven Sanctuary, Baranor. Castanur, the old elf leader, is described as a deft negotiator, which actually highlights the dire straits the elves are in. The source material reveals they're so pressed by resource scarcity, they're forced to organize daily hunts just for meager supplies. Feeding human prisoners is a serious logistical burden for them.
And the elves aren't just hungry, they're being vexed by a new, mysterious threat. These void darters and demon-like beings astride dreadmounts.
Exactly. These are the earliest manifestations of the dread's influence bleeding into Mykemia. This whole situation creates the perfect pressure cooker for Jim Dasher to showcase his unique skills. He has to negotiate his way out of being a starving prisoner, and he does it with pure trickery and resourcefulness.
How does he pull it off?
He uses a vial of mossback venom to incapacitate one elven pursuer, deliberately making sure the second elf, Cinda, sees exactly what he did. Then, instead of killing Cinda, he offers the antidote, securing Cinda's immediate trust in exchange for the lives of his captured friends, Casper's men.
That's a classic high-stakes gamble. Risky.
Extremely. Had he killed Cinda, Castanur would have likely retaliated and killed Casper's entire unit. But by offering the antidote and then presenting a queen's token as proof of their mission's legitimacy, Jim Dasher secures Castanur's trust in Casper's honesty and the severity of the incoming threat. It's the diplomacy of the thief, unconventional, effective, and centered entirely on shared survival.
That successful negotiation immediately leads to the highest level alliance possible, doesn't it? The arrival of Thomas.
Yes, Thomas the Dragon Lord, riding his dragon, Ryeth, in his true Valheru form. This is the moment when the ancient, powerful protectors of Mykemia realize they must finally join the war.
And Tomas's arrival sets the stage for this huge revelation about the oldest inhabitants of the continent. The peaks of the core aren't just mountains.
No, they are home to the core, the most ancient race of Mykemia.
Who are the core exactly? The sources are a bit vague.
They're described as green, elongated-headed beings, sometimes appearing as pure pillars of light or energy. They seem to be inexplicably linked to the very center of all life on Mykemia, making them fundamental to the world's existence. The Sun Elves, the Anoret Hell, are their ancient guardians, which explains why they're so isolated and so fierce in their defense of that region.
Okay, so the Dasati landing near the core was absolutely not accidental. They were targeting a deep wound on the world's lifeline, essentially. And Tomas also confirms the identity of those creatures vexing the elves.
He does. He issues this terrifying warning. The invading dreadlings are children of the void, minor manifestations of the dread itself, a cosmic foe even the legendary Valheru struggled against in ages past.
Children of the Void. That changes the entire tactical playbook, doesn't it? If they're children of the Void, Tomas warns they are not truly alive. They can't be killed in the normal sense.
Exactly. They can only be incapacitated, maybe dispersed. This requires specialized strategy, defense, and containment, rather than simple warfare. Tomas warns that if the Dread find a stable passage to Midkemia, the entire continent could be reduced to ashes very, very quickly. The stakes are raised instantly from regional conflict to total annihilation.
Right. So back on Sorcerer's Isle, Miranda and Tomas are coordinating with the Midkemian magicians and clerics. The evacuation plan is moving into its final, massive phase.
And Pug is orchestrating this colossal effort. He's establishing rifts to a new, unoccupied world for the Serrani refugees. That's the bulk of the survivors. He creates a separate gateway to a distant continent for the migratory Thun, and another separate gateway for the Thurl Highlanders. This is a magical feat of world-saving scale, literally relocating entire civilizations in a matter of days.
But the politics of survival are never simple, are they? The Thurl, known for being loud, outspoken, and having this ancient blood feud with the Serrani, they reluctantly agree to evacuate.
Yeah, their acceptance is definitely begrudging. They agree to move via the rift, but only if they are settled in their own separate highlands on the New World. It reflects their fierce independence and, that traditional distrust of the Serrani. It's a necessary political compromise, even when facing oblivion.
However, the most profound moment of refusal comes from the Choja, the insectoid race.
That's a really moving part of the source material. Miranda approaches their hive queen, offering a new, lush world, detailing the paradise they could inhabit. But the Choja queen solemnly refuses the offer. She chooses instead to die with their world.
Why?
The sources describe Miranda sensing that the Choja are so intimately, so fundamentally tied to their current world that abandoning it would be a form of spiritual death for them anyway. She senses something beautiful and important. This profound connection to life itself is about to be tragically lost. It really highlights the vast emotional and cultural diversity facing annihilation. It's not just about saving bodies, but ways of being.
A heavy moment. So, with the evacuation underway, Pug and his closest allies must now execute the final, desperate gamble on the Dasati homeworld itself.
Yes, Pug, Magnus, and Nakor return to Omadjwar for the final confrontation. Their journey through that stagnant, terrified Dasati city is described as incredibly tense. The atmosphere of dread is palpable, clinging even to the elite Death Knights they pass.
And there's that fascinating architectural insight Nakor provides during the journey, isn't there?
Yeah, he notes the absolute lack of art, except for the dark, strange designs carved onto the Dasati themselves. He also observes the staggering scale of the structures, buildings miles wide reaching thousands of feet high.
What does he make of that?
He speculates that these massive constructions were built only by the old gods of the Dasati, reflecting a scale of ability that current mortal technology, even advanced Dasati technology, simply cannot replicate. It hints that the Dasati civilization is maybe just a shadow of its former, even more terrifying glory.
They press onward to the Great Palace, where the Dark God, the Dreadlord himself, is manifesting. Pug uses his enhanced Dasati vision to perceive the entity. How is it described?
In horrifying detail. The Dreadlord is massive, bloated, and engorged like a monstrous tick, living, breathing, and feeding in this vast sea of captured life force. This visualization confirms that the Dreadlord is essentially a parasite, literally sucking the vitality out of existence itself.
And the ritual taking place beneath him. That's the culmination of the suicide raids on Keloan, right? The purpose behind harvesting all those lives.
Exactly. Death priests are presiding over the sacrifice of captured Serrani soldiers who are being thrown into this colossal pit tunnel leading directly to the second realm, to Keloan. They are literally feeding millions of lives into this conduit to make the gateway stronger, ensuring the Dreadlord can cross over and begin the world remaking process.
But the prophecy must unfold. It starts with a massive, perfectly timed internal coup. Back that bloodthirsty young Dasati warrior.
Yeah, he acts with this almost demented glee, slaughtering the Tekarana's personal guards, the Telnoi.
And then the showdown, Beck versus the Tekarana.
It's titanic. They are massive warriors of similar stature, and the fight is initially described as evenly matched, but Beck wins by using a specific, shocking tactic. A non-Dasati move, a brutal punch to the jaw that disables the Tekarana just long enough for his sword to drop.
That unorthodox violence proves his claim.
It does. The sources note that this single act makes Valko, Beck's accomplice, the new Tekarana. It follows the fundamental Dasati rule. He who kills his liege becomes the ruler. The Death Knights of the White immediately kneel to Valko, providing the perfect fatal distraction right when the ultimate power needs it.
And that ultimate power. This leads us to the most monumental revelation in the entire source material. Nakor's confession.
It's huge. Pug finally confronts Nakor about his cryptic nature, his hidden knowledge, and Nakor reveals the staggering truth: his life, Makr's entire existence, even Pug's own destiny. None of it was random. It was all orchestrated by a god.
Which,
Banath, the god of thieves, gamblers, and impossible quests. Nakor confesses that Banath chose to intervene in this conflict because the fundamental rules of existence confine the other greater gods to their own realms. They simply cannot interfere directly in this planar conflict.
but Baneth, the master trickster, finds the loophole.
Of course he does. He's the god who deals in the impossible and the unconventional. He orchestrated Pug's childhood, guiding Macros to him, making Macros believe he was serving the lost god of magic, when in reality, Macros was just an unwitting servant in Banath's centuries-long plan.
Wow. This elevates the whole story from a magical defense to this cosmic chess game, where Baneth is playing like 50 moves ahead.
Pretty much. Nakor confirms he was Banath's vessel, the guide to the true weapon, that god-killer jewel. He tells Pug that this desperate, hopeless cause of stemming the advance of the Dread was the ultimate goal all along, and now his own purpose is fulfilled. He needs to stay behind and die to ensure the final critical step is completed.
So Makor, animated by Baneth's residual power, waits in the throne room as the Dreadlord prepares for his final ascent.
That's the scene. The Dreadlord appears in his ultimate form, 30 feet tall, massive, with legs like a goat's and wings of pure shadow. Its eyes are flaming coal and is ready to launch itself up that tunnel to Calawan.
And Nakor steps over the body of Lissoverin, the traitor, and performs his final calculated act.
He holds the black jewel, the god-killer, in his palm and just flicks it up the immense vertical tunnel leading to the second realm. The forces confirm the jewel isn't an explosive, it's an absorbing agent. It draws the tunnel's intense energy into itself, sealing the passage and closing the conduit off behind the ascending Dreadlord.
So it traps the Dreadlord between realms.
Effectively, yes. This action achieves three things simultaneously. It kills the Dark God for the Dasati realm, seals the tunnel, and crucially frees the millions of captured souls that were powering the Dreadlord's engine.
And Pug.
Pug, having received that final confirmation from Banath that his entire life was a meticulously planned preparation for this exact moment, is transported back to Calawan just as the Dreadlord, trapped and weakened, launches his final desperate assault.
So Pug's return to Calawan is immediate, right into the thick of it. And the scene is one of just rapidly escalating devastation. The defense, mounted by General Allenberga, Caspar, and Eric von Darkmoor, successfully slowed the ground forces. But that metaphysical wound, the Dasati presence, is still expanding.
Massively. The Black Mount, that massive Dasati sphere that acts as their entry point and protective dome, is expanding exponentially. The sources say it has swallowed 2 major cities and a score of towns, rising so high its peak vanishes completely into the clouds. It is a physical manifestation of the disturbance itself, growing unchecked.
And Miranda's scout report confirms the horror of the final frantic push from the Dasati side.
Yes. Death Knights are being driven, almost like automatons, to drag nets of dead and dying Serani into the vast pit, the tunnel. They are still trying to feed it in a desperate attempt to make the remaining portal stronger, even as the conduit itself is collapsing from Nakor's action.
They don't know it's too late.
Exactly. The Death Priests are exploiting the fanatical loyalty of the Death Knights, knowing full well they are doomed to die on Calawan's highly energetic surface anyway. This final sacrifice, however, is too late. The expansion brings the edge of the Black Mount within a mile of the final rift portals, and time just runs out instantly.
Which brings us to the evacuation climax. Pug, working with Magnus, is forced to close the rifts prematurely. An action that carries the ultimate moral burden, doesn't it?
Absolutely devastating. He holds the rifts open for as long as he possibly can, knowing every single second allows a few more refugees to escape. But the imminent assault by the trapped, enraged Dreadlord, combined with the sheer instability of the expanding Black Mount, forces his hand. The moment he closes the rift.
Millions are lost.
Millions of people. Serani refugees still desperately trying to reach safety, and even the doomed Death Knights and Death Priests caught outside their sphere are consigned to certain death on Calawan.
The sources describe the sound, the wail of despair that tears at Pug's heart. He makes the impossible choice. World destruction versus the agonizing sacrifice of millions. The action saves Calawan, or what's left of the Serani people, but the cost is just incalculable.
So what is the final grim tally from the sources? The Serani losses are immense, implied to be in the millions swallowed by the Black Mount and those trapped behind the closed rifts. Of the magical leadership, only 41 great ones managed to get through to the Academy on the New World. maybe 100 more scattered to other refugee settlements. It is a devastating cultural and intellectual collapse for them.
And on the Midkemian front, the allies who led the delaying action.
The core Midkemians involved in that specific operation, Jim Dasher, Johnny, Ted, and Zane, are sent home, their immediate duty fulfilled. But General Allenberga, Eric von Darkmoor, and Kaspar Velasco remain behind.
Why do they stay?
They led the Serrani forces in that final, brutal delaying action, and now they face the monumental task of helping organize the fragmented Serrani population in their strange new world. Kaspar, the former adversary of the Serrani, reflects on his role, acknowledging the immense trust Pug placed in him.
And there's that line from Kaspar about taking his soul back.
Yes, he feels that by fighting for this cause, for people that were once his sworn enemies, he has somehow taken his soul back. It's a really powerful note of personal redemption amidst all the devastation, showing that even in the face of cosmic horror, individual moral recovery is still possible.
It's a small light in the darkness. And finally, we have to honor the cost paid by Pug's little cheat, Nakor.
Yeah. Pug mourns his old friend deeply, finally understanding that Nakor's sacrifice, orchestrated by the god of thieves, was the absolutely indispensable linchpin. It prevented the full ascent of the Dreadlord and saved both Kilowan and the remnants of the Serrani race. The man whose entire existence was presented as a cosmic joke died to save reality.
Okay, so we began this deep dive by setting the stage for a universe-rending crisis. We explored the chilling metaphysics of the Dasati threat, their really disturbing self-destructive culture, where empathy is weakness and architecture is just gray monotony. We navigated Miranda's excruciating intelligence gathering and the desperate political gambits on Kilowan.
Right. Then we charted the fragile alliances forged on Midkemia, learning about the ancient core and the whole tactical dilemma presented by those void darters. And ultimately, the survival of reality hinged on a staggering, planned betrayal orchestrated by a minor deity, that whole Banath reveal, which culminated in Nakor's final, definitive sacrifice to seal the planar breach.
So if you followed along, you now have the full context of why the defense was so desperate, why seemingly random events were actually the careful machinations of an ancient, tricky god, and the incredibly high price paid, millions of lives, and the complete abandonment of a home world just to save one plane of reality from being devoured by the next.
Which brings us back to the ultimate master of the long game, Banath, the god of thieves, gamblers, and impossible quests. He successfully orchestrated events over centuries, using people like Macros and Pug, essentially as pawns, to contain the Dreadlord and seal the Dasati portal. The Dark God is dead, at least in that manifestation, and the immediate threat is contained, for now.
Yeah, for now feels important. This raises a really interesting question for you to mull over as you process this deep dive. Banath played this crucial role because the rules confine the other greater gods. Now that he has secured the survival of the Serrani people on their new world and established Valko, a fiercely loyal, but let's face it, inexperienced Dasati as the Tekorana back on Omadrabar. What will be the nature of Banath's next grand scheme?
Exactly. How will the god of trickery influence this newly transplanted Serrani civilization? And what about Valko, whose entire life, or at least his ascension, was meticulously manipulated for this specific moment?
The ultimate trickster hasn't merely won this round, he has completely reshaped the cosmic chessboard.
And the new game, we can only assume, will be even more impossible.
That is all the time we have for this deep dive. We look forward to seeing what sources you bring us next time.